You probably know this moment. A small box opens, a ring appears, and the assumption is that this gesture is ancient, romantic, and universal. That the circle of metal on your left hand carries a meaning as old as love itself. Most people, if asked, would say the wedding ring is simply a symbol of eternal commitment. The circle has no end, so the bond has no end. They might add something about the left hand, a vein running directly from the ring finger to the heart. They might assume this is how it has always been, more or less, across most of human history. That story is not entirely wrong, but it is not the whole record. And the parts of the record that get left out are, in several ways, more revealing than the polished version. The impulse to mark a bond with a worn object is genuinely old. Archaeological evidence places rings among burial goods in ancient Egypt, and Roman betrothal customs included the giving of a ring as a legal and social declaration. But in the Roman tradition, the ring was not primarily a symbol of love. It was closer to a receipt. It marked that a negotiation had concluded, that a woman had passed from one household's authority toward another. The iron ring, the anulus pronubus, was a functional object in a property arrangement. Sentiment may have existed around it, but the documented purpose was transactional. The material itself mattered in Roman society not for romantic reasons, but for economic ones. Iron signified durability and permanence, but it also signified that this was a serious legal commitment with enforceable consequences. The ring was worn publicly, which meant it served as a visible signal to everyone who saw the woman that she was now bound to a particular household. It was identification as much as ornamentation. The belief about the vein, the Vena Amoris running from the left ring finger to the heart, is one of the most durable legends attached to this custom. It is also one of the easier ones to date. The claim appears in early modern European writing and was treated as established anatomical fact for a period in which most anatomical facts were wrong. No such dedicated vein exists. The story survived long after the anatomy was corrected, which tells you something about how these symbols work. The poetry outlasts the error that generated it. The idea did not originate in Rome, despite the frequent attribution. Roman texts describe the ring finger as significant, but they do not describe the specific anatomy that later writers claimed. The vein story seems to have emerged sometime in the medieval or early modern period, when medical knowledge was heavily mixed with poetic interpretation and symbolic thinking. Once established, it did real work. It gave people a reason, grounded in what sounded like physical reality, to wear the ring on that specific finger. The fact that the reason was false did not matter nearly as much as the fact that it was emotionally compelling and easy to repeat. The Christian Church's involvement transformed the ring from a civil or domestic marker into a sacramental object. By the medieval period, the exchange of rings had been drawn into the formal rite of marriage. This was a significant shift. The ring was no longer just evidence of a social contract. It was now part of a ceremony with theological weight. The Church also worked over several centuries to regularize when and how marriages could be performed at all. The ring became one of the visible physical signs of a union the Church now claimed authority over. For most of European history, what the ring was made of depended almost entirely on what you could afford, which meant most rings were not diamonds. They were iron, then bronze, then gold for those with access to it. Gemstones appeared on rings worn by the wealthy, but they were diverse: rubies, sapphires, emeralds. The idea that a diamond was the natural or necessary center of a wedding ring is not ancient. It is not even old by most historical standards. The diamond wedding ring as a mass expectation is, in documented terms, a 20th century construction. The De Beers Company, which had established near total control over the global diamond supply by the early 20th century, faced a serious problem in the late 1930s. Diamond sales in the United States had declined, and the stones were not culturally entrenched as engagement markers for ordinary buyers. In 1938, the company hired the advertising agency N.W. Ayer to change that. The campaign that followed did not just advertise diamonds. It worked to attach them, in the popular imagination, to the idea of romantic love and permanent commitment in a way that felt timeless and inevitable. The phrase that crystallized this effort, "A diamond is forever," appeared in 1947. It is among the most effective advertising lines of the 20th century, not because it sold a product, but because it embedded a commercial preference inside what felt like a truth about love. The permanence of the diamond was made to rhyme with the permanence of marriage. To give a smaller stone or no stone was quietly recast as giving less love. The campaign also discouraged resale, which would have flooded the market and revealed that diamonds, treated as commodities, hold inconsistent value. The ring was supposed to be forever, so it could never be returned. The campaign worked in part because it aligned with existing cultural expectations about how men were supposed to demonstrate commitment. By the mid-20th century, the measure was becoming codified. A guideline emerged suggesting that the ring should cost roughly 2 months of the buyer's salary. That specific benchmark did not come from tradition, it came from marketing materials. But it was presented as common sense, and common sense, once widely enough adopted, starts to function like tradition, even when its origin is entirely traceable. None of this means the people who exchanged rings under these conditions did not mean it. Human feeling is real, regardless of the commercial infrastructure built around its expression. But it does mean that what feels like timeless tradition is, at several key points, a documented construction. The Vena Amoris was a medical error. The diamond standard was an advertising achievement. The sacramental framing was an institutional decision. Each layer was presented in its own time as simply the way things are. What survived across all these transformations is the core gesture, the physical, wearable object placed on the body as a declaration to the world. That part does appear to have genuine continuity across cultures and centuries, even when the meaning attached to it shifted entirely. Ancient Rome used it to mark property transfer. The medieval church used it to mark sacred union. The 20th century used it to move inventory. The ring itself, the simple circle, absorbed each new meaning without resisting any of them. It is exactly the kind of object that myths attach to. Small, durable, worn on the body, visible at every social moment. The circle's geometry already suggested completion. The cultures that received it added whatever they needed it to say. Today, the exchange persists in ceremonies across traditions that would have little else in common. The vein story still circulates, decades after anyone last believed the anatomy. The diamond still appears, even as some buyers, knowing the history, choose differently. The institution has been extended to couples who were legally excluded from it within living memory, which is its own kind of evidence that the meaning is not fixed. When you understand how the tradition was assembled, you do not lose the meaning people invest in it. What you lose is the assumption that the meaning was always there, waiting to be discovered. The ring did not carry a single truth across the centuries. It carried whatever the dominant authority of each era needed it to carry. That is, in the end, what makes it such a durable object. Not that it means one thing, but that it holds whatever meaning is placed into it, generation after generation, without ever looking like it was made to do that. The circle looks the same as it always did. What changed each time was everything around it. Which raises a question worth sitting with. When we say a tradition is ancient, do we mean the object or the meaning? Because in this case, those are very different answers.